if I have one leg, I'm going to hop. And I'm going to hop to my...
You did for a half in a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
What's up, everybody? Trey Wingo here. Welcome into another episode of Half Forgotten History. Glad you're with us. Our guest this week is the pride of Bloomfield, Connecticut, who learned his patented football move while trying to avoid being called for traveling while playing high school basketball. I'm talking about, of course, Dwight Freeney. Graduated from Bloomfield High, went to Syracuse University, and was the first real undersized impact edge rusher drafted in the first round of the NFL. We sat down with Dwight to talk about how he got to Syracuse and what he made of his opportunity once he was taken in the first round by the Indianapolis Colts, and whether or not he was the trendsetter for all those edge rushers we see today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation with Dwight Freeney. All right, so I bumped into you recently in Indianapolis, and we sort of had this conversation, and I think it's accurate. Would you consider yourself sort of a trailblazer for the hybrid rush ends we see now playing on a regular basis and being drafted high on a regular basis in the NFL?
To be honest, I think I might be, man. It's before me, guys like me weren't really drafted high. Okay, we would be these tweener,
that was the phrase.
Third down specialist, come down in third down and make a play. But to be drafted in the first round, in the top 15 picks, that wasn't, so I wasn't expecting to be drafted where I got drafted. And, thank God I had a good career and showed, the NFL, look, it's not about how tall you are or how big you are. It's about you making plays. And that's what you see now. And now you see guys even like Aaron Donald, who's 6'1", and just making plays left and right, even though it's a D tackle position. And you see other guys that make plays that, quote unquote, maybe in the 80s or the early 90s wouldn't even be drafted or drafted as high as they did.
So I think what we're saying is you're the defensive Russell Wilson, right? That's what we're saying, right? Because the knock on him was he's 5'11". That's why he went in the third round of 2012, and he went on to have that career. So you're the defensive Russell Wilson.
I mean, hate to, I love Russell to death. I hate to attach a quarterback to my name. Okay.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I see what you're saying. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not, I don't know the history of the game from all who has played prior to me, but I do know that, I put a good, effort in there for the smaller, undersized guys, if you would call it that. And the guys who can just go out there and flat out just play and have a good time. That's it.
So we'll get into your NFL career in a little bit, but I always like hearing people's origin stories, especially someone from Hartford, Connecticut that grew up in Bloomfield, Connecticut, because everybody probably knows that at this point there's this little thing called ESPN, which is in Bristol, Connecticut. Bloomfield is somewhere out there in the sticks. It's not too far away. So whether we all wanted to admit it or not, and I'm from Connecticut originally, I grew up in Fairfield County, to see someone like yourself go on and have all this kind of success, it was kind of like, hey, Connecticut guy, which was kind of cool. So when did you start thinking about playing football as the thing that was going to take you where you needed to be?
I think, Trey, it really started probably my junior year in high school. I was a kid who played all different types of sports.
You were a goalie in soccer for a while,
listen,
right?
Man, I was in goalie. I was in bowling leagues. I was in all types of basketball, baseball. I played them all, and I think a lot of the other sports kind of started to fall off just a little bit. I wasn't going to be 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", right? So, it's hard to be a 6'1" power forward in the NBA, right? So I knew that wasn't going to happen. Plus, I didn't have a jump shot. I was kind of like a Dennis Rodman or whatever, Charles Oakley in a way. Like, I was a great defensive player, but don't ask me to freaking shoot a free throw or shoot a jump shot. It wasn't happening. All right. So, I knew that kind of fell by the wayside. And then baseball, I was a great baseball player, I think, in high school, but my arm gave out. I was a product of your dad being the head coach, I think, and I always kind of give him crap when I see him. I said, man, there's no reason why I should have been a pitcher. I had the strongest arm on the team. But, when you put you on the mound and you're throwing 40, 50 times a game, by the time, it came to a tryout for MLB, I had nothing. I was bouncing the ball to third base. I was bouncing the ball into the home plate, when I was throwing the ball. So that kind of fell by the wayside. So football kind of just, the stars aligned.
But there was something about basketball that you took to the NFL and Syracuse that became almost your signature move.
No, absolutely. I was a huge, huge fan of and one mixtapes. Like I said, I was a big basketball guy, and one mixtapes in the 90s, it was everything. Okay. So I wanted to kind of find a way to take basketball, the basketball court, to the football field. All right. So I was in the practice field one day. I was going out and doing different moves and making, just trying to figure out a way to make a guy completely miss. And it kind of dawned on me. I said, you know what? Let me see if I could spin, man. Let me see if I can just make this guy completely whiff. And I started doing that in high school in practice. And it all kind of derived from that and one mixtape, embarrass a guy, make the guy fall over and break his ankles, and that was kind of how it, started for me, Trey.
That's actually very cool. And by the way, there's an exceptional documentary out now about and one mixtapes and all the shit that went sideways there, which is kind of fascinating as well. But so that was that became your signature move. And how did you end up at Syracuse?
Well, Syracuse was a school where, it wasn't too far away where I can, I'm away, but I can get home when I need to. It's about 3.5 hours to 4 hours from Connecticut. And when they recruited me, when I went to that locker room and I felt the energy of what they were giving me, it was so similar to how it was in high school where, you're out there trying to, kill guys, you're damn near banging your head on the locker like, let's go get them, and I was used to that energy. I took some other recruiting visits to some other schools and it was kind of like, I felt like I was in a library. I felt like somebody died or something like that. And everybody was ready, didn't want to say a word and was afraid to say anything. So Syracuse, it had me juiced up, man, when I came on that visit and I was done. I had to go there.
So when you left high school to go to Syracuse, you were 6'1". How much did you weigh?
Probably 220, maybe. 225.
So you were legitimately
around there.
Yeah. And how quickly did they try and put some weight on you? And because then it becomes this dynamic, right? Because I think it's you clocked a 4.40 and at one point, so you like, hey, we need to build you up, but we don't want to build you up too much because then we're going to take away your natural gift.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was kind of crazy, Trey. I don't know if you know this story. But my junior year, I had a lacerated spleen. I played a game. I had to play the game versus Michael Vick, okay, when he was at Virginia Tech. Yeah. And I tackled him at one point. I had 4.5 sacks.
By the way, first of all, you caught him. So let's not bury the lead. You got him 4 times, which was not easy to do.
It wasn't his fault. And listen, that offensive tackle still might be in his stance right now. All right, it was terrible. I mean, not saying it was terrible, but it was just pretty bad. And the noise on the Carrier Dome gave me a little advantage. So I ended up getting him 4.5 sacks that game, and I ended up rupturing my spleen. Okay, so I ended up my junior year ended up being shortened. All right, so I ended up losing a bunch of weight. All right, so I kind of built myself up to like 230, and then all of a sudden I lost all that weight and went down to 215 at some point in my junior year. Okay, I had to sit down. They took me off for the rest of the year, so I had to build myself back up. And by the time I retired, but at the end of my senior year, by the time of draft, I ended up being 268. All right, now. I'm talking about eating 5-6 meals a day, building up my mass and working with, some great trainers. William Hicks, who's the guy, strength coach. I was at Syracuse for years, worked with him, and my speed never left me. I just kept eating. I literally was just like eating as much as I possibly can. And, my agent who died, Gary Richard, was like, hey, man, you got to get to 260, man. You got to get to 260. So I ended up being 268 and running a 4.4.
That's incredible that you could put on that much. Like Schlereth talks about that all the time because he was an offensive lineman. He used to he'd wake up eat. He said he'd set an alarm sometimes to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like drink a power shake and have a sandwich and do
Yeah.
that. Like it takes a commitment to put on that amount of weight.
No, absolutely. It was definitely a progression for me. I think by the end of my senior year, my last game, I was probably about 240. Okay. And then I had to put another 20, 25 pounds on here, to get to 265, 268 by March or April or whenever you weigh in for, all of the Senior Bowl stuff and all of that. So, it was definitely a process. But yeah, there was a lot of pancakes, a lot of eating 5-6 times a day for sure.
Carb it up, baby. So, I always like to hear about people's draft process because so many stories are fantastic. Like you get drafted by a team that you've never been in contact with or you've never heard from. What was the run up to the draft like for you? And when or if did you know or think that the Colts were going to take you?
Well, my process was kind of a tougher process. For me, I didn't know where I was going to be drafted, right? It was multiple. It could have been anywhere from basically the 11th pick to somewhere in the second round, supposedly. I just came off a high ankle sprain. I had a high ankle sprain in the Senior Bowl. I sprained my ankle pretty bad. So I had to figure out a way to rehab from that, be able to have a good pro day. All right. And then once I got through all of that, it was kind of like, all right, well, look, I have no idea where I want to go. I wasn't projected in the top 10, and, I'm an undersized guy like we talked about earlier. So, guys like me don't really get drafted as high. We got Mel Kiper saying this guy's a tweener. He should be available in the second round, and, it's all this stuff. So, I don't know. It was kind of a big question mark for me. But by the time that day came, Trey, it was just, I was actually floored like everyone else.
So when after the Colts drafted you, did you think I might be in the perfect position here?
You know what? I had no clue what I was getting myself into. I knew nothing about the Indianapolis Colts. I was a Giants fan growing up. All I knew was, hey, Coach Dungy's my coach, and I know he's legendary. I didn't know anything else about the team really other than the fact that they drafted Peyton Manning on offense. But us defensive players, I'll be honest with you, the mentality we had, I didn't care about I cared about the defense and who we had there, but I didn't know much about the team.
So how quickly did you sort of assimilate and realize, hey, we might have a lot of really talented players on this squad? Because, it was just a couple of years later, you were in the AFC Championship Game, or 1 year later, actually.
Yeah, it didn't take me long. It was just being, there around Coach Dungy and Ron Meeks, our defensive coordinator at the time, John Turlink, who's a legendary, he's something else, guy.
That's a whole another episode on John Turlink. That guy, like John Turlink is,
JT, man, God rest his soul, man. He was such a great defensive line coach, man. And he kind of taught me the way how to perform. Chad Bratsky, former Giant, was there as well. So he kind of taught me the ropes on how to be a pro. So I was surrounded by all these pros and these guys with so much experience, and I just soaked it all in. I didn't know much. I was just a fast guy. I run around the corner as fast as I possibly could, but they taught me how to play the game and the right way.
Well, you certainly, it went pretty quickly for you. Your first year, 13 sacks. The next year, when you go to the AFC Championship Game, 11 sacks. The year after that, 16 sacks. But you were part of that Colts team that had to go through the process of they can't beat that team. How frustrating was that for you guys? Because everyone would say this about the Colts at that time. Great regular season team. A great indoor dome team. Get them outside in the postseason, they're going to lose.
Yeah, it was frustrating, Trey. It definitely was for us. We were a team, to be quite honest with you, we were built for leads defensively for sure. Offensively, we were built for speed. We were all about speed. We had Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne. We had a lot of speed guys on defense. We had me, Robert Mathis, Bob Sanders. We had a bunch of guys, Gary Brackett, that could really run. So, for us, an advantage would be playing on surfaces that were in good shape. Now, unfortunately for us, sometimes, when I don't know if it's legal now, but all of it, you go to, Pittsburgh or you go to New England, let's just call it. And I know it didn't rain the night before, but I go to I go and run on the field and I'm stepping in puddles. I'm thinking to myself, now, I know it did. I checked the weather report. It didn't rain. Now, why and how is this possible? It's just part of the game, I guess, and I think they took all that stuff out now. And I don't think you can do all that stuff now. But there were certain, things that they would do.
Within the margins. Within the
margins, in the gray area where, is it legal? Is it not? Well, it's not in the rule book. Hey, let's do what we have to do. I think that had a lot to do with a lot of, advantages for certain particular teams. But in the end of the day, Trey, you got to line up and play. And we played great in the regular season. In the postseason, we had our struggles. I remember losing 41-0. I think I still remember.
To the Jets.
Still ringing in my head to this day. Jets, Jets. The whole entire third and fourth quarter of that playoff game, our first year. But, that's what the playoffs is about. And we had to learn that and to fight through adversity.
Well, speaking of fighting through adversity, you lose to the Patriots in the AFC Championship Game in the 2003 postseason. Then in that crazy freak, I was at that game at Foxborough in the divisional game. It didn't snow anywhere else. That snow squall was literally at Foxborough. I took my son to the game. We left in midway through the fourth quarter because the writing was on the wall. And I'm like, we drove out of the parking lot. There wasn't a snowflake anywhere else. It literally just stayed over the stadium and snowed the entire damn game.
Hey man, that's the crazy stuff I'm talking about, man. It doesn't make any sense. You don't understand why us? Where did this snow come? Did Bill and Tom do rain or snow chants before the game to get the snow going? I don't even understand some of the stuff that's happened to me, in the Colts versus the Patriots or whatever, Pittsburgh when we lose in 2005, but I still can't get over that game, how we lost that game. There's so many games and so many things that happened in my career, but the Patriots was one big one that we had to get over for sure.
So you mentioned the 2005 season, and that might have been the best Colts team that you ever played on. For those that don't remember, I think you guys got off to what, 13-0 start, 14-0 start? It was
13-0,
one of those,
14-0, something like that.
Yeah, and then an unspeakable tragedy happened. One of Tony Dungy's sons passed away. And I remember thinking, this team had been clicking on all cylinders, and no one will say it afterwards, but that had to be such a shock to the system that it can't help but affect how you play.
Yeah, I think it had some effect on it. It's hard to kind of identify exactly what it affected, but, we're all a family. We're all a family. And when one hurts, we all hurt. And especially when you have your head coach. And, when his son died, the son was running around the field with us, on many occasions. So we were close to him as well. So, when he passed away, and Tony wasn't there and we had to, it just hurt us all, man. And I'm not saying that it was, the defining fact of why we ended up, losing and falling, those last few games there. And then definitely in the first round bye. But, I think looking back on it, that definitely hurt us maybe emotionally, something deep within our subconscious or something like that. And kind of just we wanted to do it maybe too much for him. We wanted to win so bad. I don't know, if how much of a role it played, but I think it had something to do with something. Now, can't blame that for why we lost the last game or anything like that in the playoffs. But it was something that, it was one of those moments where, wish it never happened. And you just hurt and felt bad for the coach and a guy who was running the squad.
And then that led to the first round bye you talked about, and then one of the wildest games I can ever remember, that playoff game against the Steelers. It was so disjointed from the entire game. It never felt like you guys got into a rhythm. And for those that don't remember, at the very end of the game, the Steelers, like 7 minutes left, I think, in the fourth quarter, Steelers had the lead. They're at the goal line, ready to score what would pretty much be a clinching touchdown at that point and put the game away. And then Jerome Bettis, who never fumbles. And then the cornerback, whose name escapes me right now, picks it up and starts running with it. Who was it?
Nick Harper.
Yes, Nick Harper. Yep. Nick Harper picks up, and Ben Roethlisberger, of all people, makes the tackle. And look, I'm not making light of anything here, but I do remember there was a story that week where Nick's got stabbed in the leg by his wife in the thigh. And I'm like, I bet if he wasn't stabbed in the leg, he might have been able to get away from that tackle and maybe score a touchdown.
That's like I said, so many things happened, in my process of just my NFL career. And this is another crazy one. I mean, Jerome Bettis never fumbles.
Never.
On the goal line. Nick Harper picks up the ball. Of all people, he's one of the fastest guys and athletic guys we have on our team. And it just happened that he had some type of domestic situation prior to the game, like the night before or 2 nights before. So now he's running banged up. And then he gets tackled by Ben Roethlisberger, the slowest quarterback who has no mobility in the league. And he's like, yo. And then Ben I don't even know how Ben did it. It was just kind of like he fell backwards and just put his arm up. And then like Nick tripped on his like index finger. And it was just like, I'm thinking to myself how is this even possible? But somehow we get all the way back down there. And what happens? We missed the kick. Mike Vanderjagt.
And by the way,
one of the best kickers in the league.
Yeah, he was at that point the most accurate kicker in NFL history.
Yeah.
And when I tell people, if you want to go back and look at it, he didn't miss the kick. He almost missed the stadium. Like it's like that was the RCA Dome, and it almost left the building. It was so far left.
Listen, it was nowhere close. It wasn't even, I don't even think it made it past the goal line. It was one of those, the worst shanks I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, even in high school, I would just figure like at least get it in the air. It was kind of those low line drive duck hooks. Like if you're
it was a duck hook off the tee. That's exactly right.
It was like this duck hook that you're just like, you're throwing your club. Like, I can't even believe I did that. It was one of those types of kicks. I couldn't believe it. He was a Pro Bowl kicker.
At that point, he was the most accurate kicker in NFL history. And again, I was like, really? Okay. All right, why don't we take our first break here? Because all of that set the stage for what happened the very next year, and it made everything else that happened before it not that big of a deal. We'll be back with Dwight Freeney on this episode of Half Forgotten History right after this. Hope you're enjoying our conversation with Dwight Freeney. Time now for the Mercedes-Benz trivia question about Dwight's career. His longtime pass rush partner in Indianapolis, Robert Mathis, finished his NFL career with 123 sacks. How many career sacks did Dwight Freeney have, though? We'll give you the answer right after the break. You know, you open up a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter and you're opening more than doors. You're unlocking potential to do your own thing, be your own boss, and live out your own dreams. With 16 body types, your choice of a gas or diesel engine, and thousands of ways to customize, a Sprinter van is capable and versatile enough to help you drive your ambitions as far as you want to take them. So go ahead, unlock your potential inside a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. All right, back with Dwight Freeney on this episode of Half Forgotten History. We just went through the heartbreak of the first few years in the playoffs where you couldn't beat the Patriots in that crazy game against the Steelers. And it all sets up for what was really a remarkable year in 2006 in a lot of ways. You guys got off to your normal start and everything was going well. But then there was that game in Jacksonville late in the season where the only thing that stopped Fred Taylor and Maurice Jones-Drew were the goalposts. Like, I think you guys got gashed for 370 on the ground. That had to be, exactly. That had to be so demoralizing, right, as a defensive player.
It was terrible. It was terrible. We couldn't stop anybody. And in that particular game, you know, Taylor's still running right now. You know, Maurice Jones-Drew, he's still running. You know, it was terrible, man. And we just had no answers, and they didn't care. They didn't care. It was just straight like, you know what, we're going to get you back for all the times you guys killed us, and we're going to, and that's how it felt. So going into the playoffs, and our defense giving up so many yards rushing, it didn't even make any sense. But we knew what we were capable of doing. We just had a bad game, I guess.
Well, it's interesting because I remember Tony after that game, Tony Dungy saying, "Hey, we can fix this," and we're all, okay, whatever, 300, we'll fix it for the postseason. But he said it was really more about spacing and alignment, and we can adjust those things. And then in that playoff run, you had a home game against the Kansas City Chiefs with Larry Johnson. Then you go on the road to Baltimore with Jamal Lewis, and then the AFC Championship game, which we'll get to in a minute, when they had Lawrence Maroney. So to get where you guys needed to be and where you eventually went, the Super Bowl, you had to run through a gauntlet of really tough running games, and you shut them all down.
Yeah, and that was the thing with us. If it was one of those years where if it was 4th and 1 and we had to stop somebody, we're going to stop you. Okay? Now, if it was 2nd and 9 and we're thinking it's a pass and then you run the ball, well, guess what? You might get 11 yards running the ball. It was one of those things, but we always knew as a defense, we can stop anybody from running the ball once we commit to it. Okay? Yeah. And so we kind of fixed those issues that we had. All right. I think the Chiefs were leading the league as far as rushing going into it. We were the worst against the run. Everyone else had us losing that game, but we knew defensively, like, look, if we're going to do what we do like we do in 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1, all right, commit fully to the run, and we're going to stop no matter who it is because we knew what we had and how to fix it. And we have one of the best coaches that's ever coached the game teaching us and telling us, hey, you guys are completely fine. Don't panic. We just have to do the things that we need to do, which means everyone has to be accountable and doing their particular job. All right. And we knew we had to stop the run. Yeah. That was it. And that was our it wasn't like a new scheme. We didn't put anything else new. We just said to ourselves, look, we know we can do it. This is all self-inflicted. It really had nothing to do with who we were playing. It's about us. And just do what we do better than they do what they do. And was the formula.
And it worked for those games against Kansas City, and it worked for the game in the divisional round against Baltimore. And then because of a litany of things, the Chargers losing as the number 1 seed, and you guys were the 3 seed. So you ended up hosting the AFC Championship game, and who comes into town but Tom Brady and the New England Patriots? And if the game against the Steelers the previous year was wild and crazy in an awful way, this game was ridiculous in a very good way for the Indianapolis Colts. Peyton throws that pick 6 to Asante Samuel Sr., not the one that's playing now, right before the half, and it's boom, you're down 21-3 in 18 points with 3 minutes to go before the half. You guys had to be thinking, here we go again. And then I remember telling my son, who was a big Colts fan at the time, I said, if they just get a field goal before the half, that's good because they get the ball to start the second half. And lo and behold, you do kick a field goal. So you go down not 21-3, you go into the half 21-6. And I think Tony Dungy said something in the locker room like, guys, if we score first in this first drive, it's a brand new ball game, which is just a 1-score game.
Yeah, and that's the thing, with the history of our teams and all of the adversity that we faced, versus the Patriots, there was probably some doubt in some guys' mind where they were feeling like, oh, God, no, not again. We're here again. But I would say, if anything, it fired us up more. It was kind of like one of those things where you're like this starving dog and you're like, you're wounded. And that's when you're wounded, that's when you're most dangerous. It wasn't kind of like we're just going through the game and, hey, we're high-fiving it. We're killing these guys, and then they come back and beat us. It was more like, all right, now we're this wounded dog in the corner starving. All right, we got to figure out a way to make this thing happen. And that's what we ended up doing is going out. And like Coach Dungy said, he pretty much just said it exactly how you said it. All we got to do is, hey, we're going to get the ball back. We're going to go back and score. It'll be a 1-score game, and then anything is possible. And that's exactly what happened. And I think Tony gave us that, look, and that's how Tony is. Like never too high, never too low. Look, guys, we got this. Do what we need to do, and all will take care of itself.
And then, of course, that game I'll always remember because 3 fat guy touchdowns or 3 fat guy scores. Jeff Saturday falls on a fumble. He scores a touchdown. Logan Mankins falls on a fumble, scores a touchdown for the Patriots. And then Klecko, I think, caught a 2-point conversion from Peyton Manning on that first touchdown drive of the second half to make it a 21-14 game.
It's crazy. Like the average weight of a touchdown was probably like 300 pounds. Never in the history of the game had it ever been so high. It's kind of crazy, but we were creative and the ball kind of bounced our way finally versus the Patriots that game.
Well, speaking of bouncing your way, late in that game, Reggie Wayne has a catch and it's in his hands. And for whatever reason, he just bats it up in the air. And that ball is in the air for like 2 seconds, it felt like. And for it came right back down to him. And that led to the game-winning score with Joseph Adai that sent you guys on your way. And then after all of that, you finally get to the Super Bowl. And it is, to this day, still the worst weather Super Bowl of all time. It rained from start to finish. And what did the Colts do? They go out there in bad weather, play great defense, run the rock, stop the run, and finally get your Lombardi trophy.
It was, like I said, it's just amazing some of these, these coincidences or these things that have happened, in my journey. And the Super Bowl is definitely one of them. I would say, what helped us, believe it or not, in the Super Bowl was winning against the Patriots in the AFC Championship. We felt like that was our Super Bowl victory almost in that AFC Championship game. So it didn't matter who we were playing. We didn't care, Trey, who we were playing. But in the Super Bowl, we knew if we beat the Pats, whoever's next is going to get it. And that's what it was. And of course, monsoon. The field was terrible. It was the only Super Bowl, I think, in history that's ever rained the way that it rained. It was terrible, right? All the stars aligned for Chicago. It was kind of like they're a running team. We're a passing speedy team. So, first kickoff, you have Devin Hester running it back for a touchdown.
See ya.
But, like I said, I think that, that momentum from, the week or 2 weeks prior to, our mentality was, look, man, it don't matter. This is our year. We're going to make this thing happen. And no matter what circumstances, situation, field, whatever, we got to get it done.
So considering that you had you fell behind, you're playing on grass, you're playing in terrible weather, you ran the rock with proficiency, you stopped the run. When it was all over and you looked at all the check marks that people had said, well, the Colts can't do this, they can't do this, and they can't do that. With all of that being lined up against you and you overcame all that, how much sweeter did it make finally holding that trophy?
No, I mean, it made it amazing. We all of our doubters, all the guys are out there. Well, the Colts are a great regular season team, but they'll never win the big one. Peyton can never win the big one. Our defense can't stop anybody. They're great against the pass, terrible against the run. And, and it showed, statistically, it did show it. So I understand where it was coming from, but we also knew what we were capable of. So it made it a lot sweeter when you have all of those doubters doubting you, and that's kind of the story of my life, really. It was, no one thought that you would be able to make a guy from Bloomfield, Connecticut. I mean, there's no real pros from that area, there's not a lot of guys that come from there. And you go to Syracuse, they're going to move you to middle linebacker, outside linebacker, you're too undersized. And then you get to the pros, it was like, this guy's going to play a couple years, and he's a tweener, and he, and that was kind of my story. So to have that type of story happen to us as a team, as well as an individual personally, it made it sweeter for me.
It certainly did. And then, the Patriots went on their undefeated season in 2007. You guys had a really interesting year in 2008 because of Peyton's knee. You started 3-4. You win your last 9 games. You bow out to the Chargers in the playoffs where I think a punter might have won the game. I've never seen a punter pin a team more than Mike Cyphers did for the Chargers that he did you guys in that contest. And then we get back to the Super Bowl a few years later. But before we get there, I want to get to the AFC Championship game against the Jets because the game was over. It's 2 minutes left in the game, 2.5, 3 minutes left.
No.
It's decided. And on a, did you get him? Did you sack him or did you just get him?
It was terrible. This is terrible. When I say terrible, I still think about this to this day and just shake my head. Look, we have them down 2 scores.
Yeah.
Okay. And no one's you're not actually thinking you're gonna get out there and get hurt. All right. We're just trying to shut the door.
Right.
All right. This is the year, if my memory serves me correct, where they started putting these rules in of strike zone with the quarterback. Kind of like you can't hit him here, you can't hit him there.
Yeah.
That all plays a factor into what's gonna happen. So I'm running around the corner and I just fly by my offensive tackle. And here he is, Sanchez, I'm about to completely knock him out or something, whatever.
Decleat him, yeah.
Decleat him, whatever. And something goes through my mind. It's like, you know what? Don't hit him too high. Don't hit him this, don't hit him that. So what I ended up doing was I said, you know what? Instead of just really I tried to avoid him.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. I jump over him to avoid him. And somehow he gets hit by someone else and the quarterback rolls on the back of my ankle and gives me like a high ankle sprain. And it was like a 3rd degree high ankle sprain where all my ligaments were completely severed. I got hurt by avoiding a quarterback, which I never avoid. Yeah. The quarterback hurt me. It was if my hate wasn't there for the quarterback at that point, my hate for quarterbacks has exploded, has grown extra. Just out of this world. Trying to avoid a guy, I get hurt by the guy that I love to hit. It was just terrible for me. And right before the Super Bowl, it was terrible, Trey.
I remember that was the story going in. Like, how is he? Like the thought process for all of us sort of covering that game that year was like, I think Dwight will play, but then you have the elongated halftime of Super Bowl where you have the show and they got to get the stage on and the stage off. And we said that in the run up to that game, we were like, I think he's going to be okay in the first half. He'll get out there and do what he can. But once you have to shut it down for 20 or 30 minutes, and that just kills the ability of that ankle to keep moving at the level that you had tried to play in the first half with.
It was terrible, Trey. It was exactly how you describe it. It was exactly what happened. First of all, I was supposed to be out 4 weeks. It was like a 4 to 6 week injury. Okay. High ankle sprain, 3rd degree, no ligament. I don't even know how I got myself to be able to play. It was adrenaline, whatever. Somehow I got myself ready to go. And I was playing good the first half. Had a sack. The guys, they couldn't block me. Then halftime came. Yeah. And I was like, let me get on the bike. I'm riding the bike. Okay, I'm good. Everything's all right. I'm staying warm. But you just couldn't stay warm enough for that area to stay, fluid, loose, where the muscles don't tighten up. And that's what happened. The muscles started to tighten up. I went back out there and it was so painful. And it was just like I was limping and just gimping around the field, trying to figure out a way. And then you got them, Drew Brees throwing the ball in 1.1 seconds. It's like getting rid of the ball. It was just one of those games where I was like, man, I don't know. I can't do anymore. And it just went all downhill.
Well, everyone talks about the onside kick to start the second half, which was brilliant. Yeah. And they talked about Tracy Porter's pick 6, which was great. Even though they had about 20 guys in the field when they recovered the onside kick. I've never seen anything like that in my life. I was like, okay, get the video. You should have seen it. Yeah. It was like, okay, you got 11 guys, and all of a sudden I see guys from their side like coming out on the field trying to pull people off the pile. I'm like, what's going on? And we're outnumbered right now. Right. Yeah. And it was crazy is our guy had the ball in the end and he's like, hey, we got the ball. And they still gave it to him. I still hadn't figured that out. Well, the other play I'll always remember from that game, it was a 3rd and 4 in the first half. You guys are up 10-3 and you guys have pretty much done whatever you wanted. And Peyton hits Pierre Garçon like right in the hands. And if he catches the ball, I think he's still running. Like if he doesn't score, you guys get a field goal and you guys go up 10 points. And that would change the dynamic of that game forever, right? Like that drop, I was like, let's remember that play.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what I was telling you, man. Sometimes these stars just align differently, unfortunately in these situations, and you can kind of point for things, like I said, the 2006 or 2005 Pittsburgh game, these things, Pierre never drops the ball. Pierre drops the ball. All of a sudden is like, okay, what's going to happen now? And all of a sudden it just does that.
Yeah. And that was sort of the peak of that Colts team. So why don't we take our second break here, and we come back, we'll talk about the latter half of Dwight Freeney's career and another kind of famous Super Bowl he played in and what he's up to now. Stay with us. Half Forgotten History coming right back. So you want to place a bet this Sunday on the NFL? Well, let's get you caught up with everything you need to know with Trey's Trends, presented by Caesars Sportsbook. We witnessed the biggest upset of the year in Week 7 when the completely depleted Panthers somehow took down Tom Brady and the Buccaneers 21-3, a 13-point underdog coming through with a win. It was the first straight-up victory for a double-digit dog this season. And to begin this week, there are 3 games that qualify as double-digit dogs. The Cowboys are giving 10 as they take on the Bears. The undefeated Eagles giving 11 as they take on the Steelers. And the Bills are laying 10.5 as they take on Green Bay Sunday night. And if that line holds, it'll be the first time in Aaron Rodgers' career he will be a double-digit underdog. And Buffalo is not a welcome place to go if you're a big-time underdog. Why do I say that? Because they just don't lose those games. The Bills haven't lost a home game as a 10-point favorite or more since Week 14, wait for it, of the 1992 season when they were somehow upset by the Jets. Since then, as a home favorite, giving 10 or more points, they're 18-0 straight up and 12-4-2 against the spread in those home games, including 2 wins this year over the Titans and the Steelers by 34 and 35 points respectively. So there you have it. Ready to place your bets? It's very simple. All you got to do is download the Caesars Sportsbook app today. Time now for the answer to the Mercedes-Benz trivia question about Dwight Freeney's career. We told you his longtime pass rush teammate in Indy, Robert Mathis, finished with 123 career sacks. We wanted to know how many Dwight Freeney finished with. Just 2.5 sacks more, 125.5. And he only surpassed his teammate in that final season, not with the Colts, but when he was playing for the Seattle Seahawks. And now back to more of the Half Forgotten History episode with Dwight Freeney. All right, back with Dwight Freeney now in Half Forgotten History. So after your Colts days are over, you bounce around a little bit. You go to the Chargers for a couple of years. You go to Arizona. And then of all places in 2016, you end up in Atlanta. And for those that might have forgotten, that was Super Bowl 51 between the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots. And at one point it was 20. You had a sack in that game. It's 28-3. It's 28-3. At what point, because having lived through the nightmares in Indianapolis against this dude, did you ever say, I think we got it?
Listen, it was, I think I've said this a few times now, but this might be the worst. Like I said, the things that has happened in my career, it just doesn't even make any sense to me. This happens to be the one probably out of all of them that bothers me the most. Okay? When I say we dominated that game, you watched it. We knew it. It was an absolute shellacking for 3.5 quarters of that game. And I'm telling you, just destroy. Now, defensively for sure, but offensively, look, they could not move the ball on us. We were switching up our coverages. We were finding ways to rush the quarterback different types of ways that they weren't prepared for. And then it all started to change. And I'll tell you when it started to change. I think it was sometime in that fourth quarter where, Tom and Bill, they started doing some real interesting stuff where they were running these deep routes. And this is what happened defensively, at least. They were running all these elaborate deep routes, maxing up protection. So now we're rushing with 4 guys and they're protecting with 6 to 7 guys, right? Giving Tom all type of time to throw the ball. And also They were, after these long down the field runs, Trey, they were subbing out their starters, putting fresh guys back in and running the same thing. They knew we were playing man-to-man coverage. Okay. So now we have the same defensive back playing against, the starter, then he'll play against the backup, and then the starter would come back out on third down. So now our guys are completely gassed, playing man-to-man this entire game, which has dominated the whole game. They were crying to play some zone. We wouldn't change it up because we've been so successful at playing man-to-man. So now all of a sudden it's like, defensively, like we're out there like 90 plays, right? Like damn near 100 plays. And we are A, gassed, but B, what we're looking for from the offense was just like, look, milk the clock.
Yeah.
Run the ball.
Run the ball.
Run the ball. And I was sitting on the sideline like, there is no way we lose this game. It would have to be the perfect storm for us to lose the game. And it absolutely was. Matt Ryan fumbles the ball on a sack fumble. They get the ball on the 50-yard line. They drive down the field. A miracle catches on the helmet, like balls. It was just like crazy. Get two 2-point conversions. And next thing you know, it's like, it's a game again. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. We might, be in trouble here. And we get all the way back down the field. Finally, Julio Jones comes up with this great catch.
Unbelievable catch. That catch is not talked about enough. Right. I mean, Edelman's catch, we had him on the pod. Right. It was great effort, great determination, fantastic. Julio's catch on the sidelines, go back and I don't know how Ryan got it to him, and I have no idea how he got 2 feet down and made that catch.
It was one of the best catches I've seen in pressure moments, in my career. Okay. We get that ball. I think we're like, 27-yard line, around there, 30-yard
field goal range.
We have the best kicker in the National Football League that year. He is a Pro Bowl kicker. Okay. This is not a guy who shanks the ball. We're playing inside. There's no weather. There's nothing. So in my mind at this point, I'm saying to myself,
that's it.
Game, set, match.
Yeah.
We run the ball 3 times. We get it right in the middle, kick the field goal. It's out of reach for them. Yeah. And obviously, that is not what happened.
Pass attempt, holding penalty, sack, punt.
Sack, punt.
Yeah.
Out of field goal range. It is the absolute – I'm not going to get over that. I don't think I will ever get over that. And it should have been a victory. It was a terrible feeling. Then it just adds to the, Tom Brady, he's the greatest in the world, conversation, and which hurt for me because I played against Tom so many years and he's a great guy. And you try to hate him, but you can't because he's just a great guy. So it's like, for me, it's like, oh, I hate Tom. I can't wait to hit him. I just hate this guy. And then you meet him, you're like, damn, I can't hate you.
Dang it.
Dang it, you're such a good guy.
So not to be masochistic and sadistic here, but which one hurt more? That one or the second Super Bowl 44, the way you lost to the Saints?
That one, for sure.
Wow.
That one, for sure. For me, for sure. The second one, I was banged up. I was hurt. I couldn't contribute. We weren't, firing all cylinders. It's a different feeling, Trey, when you know you have this one won and it's been taken away from you. Yeah. You'll never get over that. That New Orleans game, I can't say that. We were fighting the entire game. It was a close game, and then we were down trying to get back. This game, anybody could have won this. I mean, this game is one of those things where you just do what you're supposed to do. You play video games, just run the ball 3 times, kick the field goal, game over. You understand is that even if we missed the field goal, you still ran the ball 3 times, and then the clock is down to who knows what, and they have to have a miracle to try to score another touchdown. All of those things. So that was the worst for sure.
Well, after that, you I think in 2017 you split time with Detroit and Seattle, and then you retired as a member of the Colts. What's the thing that you're proudest of in your career from everything that we've talked about?
You know what? I think for me is, I played the game the right way. I played it hard. I played it like every play was my last, and I left it all out there. I left it all out there, and I didn't cheat the game. Sometimes you go out there and see, guys just, we call it loafing around, and just kind of like jogging around like it doesn't even matter. For me, it wasn't that. It was, this game has given me so much, and I'm going to give as much as I can to the game. And I don't care. I was a mentality of, look, if I can play, I'm going to play. I'm not going to sit out. All right. And if I have one leg, I'm going to hop. I'm going to hop to my.
You did for a half in a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're going to have to pull me out of the game. You're going to have 3 guys and 3 coaches and say, Freeney, you cannot play. You know what? You have to sit down. And that was, I think a product of the fact that, I love the game so much, and the fact that I wanted to do everything I could possibly can to help our team win. And so I think for me, that was what I was most proud of.
Is there a guy out there today that's playing and kind of reminds me of me?
I see a little bit of I see a little bit of me in a lot of players now. And it's interesting. And I know one thing is that I left my mark on the game whenever I see a spin move, because the spin move wasn't used prior to me the way that it was used, the way I used it. I'm sure guys used to spin once in a while, Trey, and when they get caught, they gotta spin out of it and happen to make a play. They were actually taught never turn your back to the quarterback.
Right.
That's how the game was taught. And then after I kind of just decided to do what I did, you see it all the time. You see Michael Parsons. I saw it the other day. Michael Parsons was playing, a game. I forget who he was playing, but he had a sweet spin move, and it was literally the same way that I kind of did my spin. It was a couple steps up. He chopped, he spun. It was kind of like, and I knew Dan Quinn was over there. Dan Quinn is the defensive coordinator, but he's also the D-line coach. So maybe there's been a little bit of transfer. I see a little bit of Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett does a lot of the same moves that I do, spinning and dipping around the corner. So I think between those 2 guys, I see I know that I left my mark in the game. So when I can watch the game, I smile when I see those guys doing spin moves and things of that nature, because it wasn't being taught and it wasn't being done.
Speaking of leaving your mark on the game, as we're taping this, the announcement came out in September that you're on the initial list for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in your first year of eligibility. What would that mean to you to hear your name called at some point?
I mean, it would mean everything to me. This is something that I'm not in control of, though. It's one of those things, if you can control it, then, you can feel whatever you want to feel about it. But for me, the feeling of achieving that isn't just a individual achievement. It's a team achievement. It's, it takes a tribe. Everyone got me to the point where I got to. And I'm talking about, people who raised my parents, who raised me, the community that was surrounded me, coaches throughout the years. So if that ever were to happen, it's a celebration, not just in my household, but many households, because we all were a part of it. And we were all part of this thing that, no one would ever have thought that this kid from Bloomfield, Connecticut would get to, and if that happens, I would be floored and amazed and just speechless, to be quite honest with you, and thankful.
Well, don't be speechless for too long, because you have to say something if you do get in. So, but listen, from the bottom of my heart, I hope it happens for you. We always enjoyed watching you play, and for a lot of us that grew up in Connecticut, whenever we saw the highlights, like, that's our guy, Dwight Freeney. And really good catching up with you, man. Listen, I wish you all the best and continued success in whatever you do, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Okay. Appreciate it, Trey. You take care of yourself, man. So thanks once again to Dwight Freeney for joining us again on the list for a potential Hall of Fame gold jacket this year. We'll see if it pans out, if his name is selected Super Bowl week for enshrinement into Canton, Ohio. Our guest next week is already there. He's the inventor of the Lambeau Leap and was one of the first Packers to be there for the turnaround after the disaster of the 80s. I'm talking about, of course, safety Leroy Butler. Our conversation with him is coming next week. We see you then.